In a small-town dojo in the heart of Texas, a shy, unassuming white girl named Ellie walked into her first karate class, her eyes glued to the floor, her heart pounding with fear. The other students, a clique of loud, confident bullies, snickered and whispered betting she'd quit before the week was out. Little did they know, Ellie was hiding a secret that would leave them speechless and flat, laying on their backs in just 60 seconds. Stick around for a story of courage, betrayal, and a jaw-dropping twist that'll make you rethink everything you know about strength. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Ellie Thompson was 16, pale as moonlight with mousy brown hair she kept tucked behind her ears. She was the kind of girl who blended into the background, the one you'd pass in the halls of Lincoln High without a second glance. Growing up in Cedar Creek, Texas, a town where everyone knew everyone, Ellie had mastered the art of invisibility. Dad, a mechanic who spent his days under car hoods, and her mom, a part-time librarian, were kind but quiet folks, content with their simple life. Ellie inherited their reserved nature, but beneath her timid exterior burned a spark she didn't even know she had until the summer that changed everything. It was June, and the Texas heat was relentless, the kind that made your clothes stick to your skin. Ellie's mom had been pestering her to get out of the house, to do something other than read fantasy novels in her room. "You need to build confidence, sweetheart," her mom said, sliding a flyer for a local karate class across the kitchen table. Ellie's stomach twisted at the thought. Physical activity wasn't her thing. She'd trip over her own feet in gym class, and the idea of standing in a room full of strangers learning to fight sounded like a nightmare. But her mom's pleading eyes won her over, and the next day, Ellie found herself standing outside Cedar Creek's only dojo, a squat brick building with a faded sign that read "Iron Will Karate." Inside, the air smelled of sweat and polished wood. The dojo was packed with students, mostly teenagers, laughing and roughhousing as they waited for class to start. Ellie slipped in quietly, clutching her oversized t-shirt, hoping to go unnoticed. She didn't. A group of older students, 3 boys and a girl, all wearing crisp white karate uniforms with colored belts, spotted her immediately. The leader, a broad-shouldered senior named Jake, smirked and nudged his friend Tyler. "Check out the new girl, Jake," said loud enough for Ellie to hear. "Bet she cries and runs home by the end of class." Tyler laughed, and the girl, a sharp-eyed brunette named Kaylee, chimed in. "She looks like she'd faint if you said boo." The fourth, a lanky kid named Ethan, just grinned and cracked his knuckles. Ellie's cheeks burned, but she kept her head down, pretending not to hear. The instructor, Sensei Harris, was a wiry man in his 50s, with a no-nonsense demeanor and a black belt that looked like it had seen decades of fights. He called the class to order, and Ellie shuffled to the back, trying to disappear into the lineup. Sensei Harris started with basic stances, and Ellie mimicked them as best she could, her movements clumsy but earnest. Jake and his crew kept glancing her way, whispering and chuckling. During a break, Kaylee accidentally bumped into Ellie, knocking her water bottle to the floor. "Oops," Kaylee said, her smile venomous. "Better watch where you're standing, new girl," Ellie mumbled in apology, and picked up the bottle, her hand shaking. What nobody in that dojo knew was that Ellie wasn't entirely new to martial arts. When she was 8, her uncle, a former Marine named Tom, had spent a summer teaching her the basics of self-defense. Tom had been stationed overseas most of Ellie's life, but that summer had stayed at their house, and every evening he'd take her to the backyard and show her how to block, strike, and move. "You're small, kid," Head said, "but size doesn't matter if you know how to use someone's strength against them." Ellie had loved those lessons, but when Tom left for another tour, they stopped, and she buried the skills deep in her memory, too shy to ever show them off. Now, standing in the dojo, those lessons felt like a distant dream drowned out by the laughter of Jake and his friends. The first few classes were torture. Jake, Kaylee, Tyler, and Ethan made it their mission to target Ellie. They'd pair up with her during drills, using just enough force to make her stumble without getting caught by Sensei Harris. They'd mock her awkward punches, call her Casper because of her pale skin, and spread rumors around school that she was too weak to tie her own belt. Ellie didn't fight back. She'd go home, lock herself in her room, and cry into her pillow, wondering why she didn't just quit. But something kept her going. Maybe it was her mom's hopeful smile. Maybe it was the faint memory of her uncle's voice telling her she was tougher than she looked. Asterisk. By the fourth class, things escalated. Sensei Harris announced a sparring session, a chance for students to test their skills in controlled matches. Ellie's stomach dropped. She wasn't ready to fight, not in front of everyone, not with Jake's crew watching like hawks. Sensei paired her with Kaylee, who sauntered onto the mat with a smug grin. "Don't worry, Casper," Kaylee said loud enough for the whole class to hear. "I'll go easy on you." The other students laughed, and Ellie felt like she was shrinking into the floor. The match began, and Kaylee didn't hold back. She threw quick, sharp jabs, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make Ellie flinch and stumble. The class cheered Kaylee on, and Jake shouted, "Finish her, Kay." Ellie barely blocked a kick, her arms trembling, and when the round ended, Kaylee bowed mockingly, earning another round of laughter. Asterisk. That night, Ellie sat on her bed, staring at the karate flyer shed crumpled into a ball. She wanted to quit, to never go back to that dojo and face those cruel faces again. But as she lay there, something shifted. She thought of her uncle, of the way Head taught her to stand her ground, to use an opponent's momentum against them. She thought of the bullies' laughter, the way it echoed in her ears. For the first time in her life, Ellie felt a flicker of anger, real, burning anger. She wasn't going to let them win, not this time. Asterisk. The next class, Ellie walked into the dojo with her head a tail higher. Jake noticed immediately and elbowed Tyler. "Look at Casper acting all tough," he said, snickering. Ellie ignored him, focusing on Sensei Harris' instructions. They were working on takedowns, now techniques to bring an opponent to the ground. Ellie listened carefully, her mind racing as she recalled her uncle's lessons. She practiced theme moves with a quiet intensity, her body remembering more than she expected. Sensei Harris noticed, giving her a nod of approval, which made Jake smirk. Falter for the first time. Asterisk. The real turning point came a week later. Sensei Harris announced a special event, a mini tournament, to showcase the students' progress. Each student would spar for 1 minute, and the winner would be decided by points, or a clean takedown. The class buzzed with excitement, but Ellie felt a knot in her stomach. She knew Jake and his crew would use this as another chance to humiliate her. Sure enough, when the pairings were announced, Ellie was matched against Jake himself. The room went quiet, then erupted in whispers. Jake cracked his knuckles and grinned. "This'll be quick," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Asterisk. The match was set for the end of class, giving Ellie time to stew in her nerves. As the other students sparred, she sat on the sidelines, her heart pounding. Kaylee leaned over and whispered, "He's gonna crush you, Casper. Might as well fake a stomachache and go home." Ellie didn't respond, but her mind was racing. She thought of every taunt, every shove, every laugh. She thought of her uncle's voice use their strength against them. When it was time for her match, Ellie stepped onto the mat, her face pale, but her eyes steady. Jake towered over her, his green belt gleaming, his grin wide and predatory. The class gathered around, phones out, ready to record what they thought would be Ellie's humiliation. Asterisk. Sensei Harris blew the whistle, and Jake came at her fast, throwing a flurry of punches. Ellie dodged, her movements surprisingly fluid, her body recalling her uncle's training. The class murmured in surprise. "Hey." Jake frowned, throwing a high kick aimed at her shoulder. Ellie didn't block it. She stepped inside his reach, grabbing his leg, and twisting her body in a move she hadn't practiced since she was 8. Jake lost his balance, and in one smooth motion, Ellie swept his other leg out from under him. He hit the mat with a thud, stunned as the timer ticked down to 60 seconds. Da! Dojo was silent, then erupted in gasps and cheers. Jake scrambled to his feet, his face red with embarrassment, but the match was over. Ellie had one. Asterisk. The class stared at her, jaws dropped. Kaylee's smug smile vanished, and Tyler and Ethan exchanged shocked looks. Sensei Harris stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with something like pride. "Well done, Ellie," he said. "You've got more in you than you let on." Ellie just nodded, her breath shaky, her heart soaring. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. Asterisk. But the story didn't end there. The next day at school, the video of Ellie's takedown spread like wildfire. Kids who'd never spoken to her before stopped her in the halls, asking how she had done it. And his crew avoided her, their confidence shaken. But Kaylee wasn't ready to let it go. She cornered Ellie in the cafeteria, her voice low and venomous. "You got lucky, Casper," she said. "Next time you won't be so lucky." Ellie met her gaze, her shyness melting into something new, resolve. "There won't be a next time," she said quietly and walked away. Asterisk, the twist came a week later. Ellie arrived at the dojo to find a new student waiting, a girl named Mia who looked even shyer than Ellie had been. Mia was small, with glasses that kept slipping down her nose, and Jake's crew wasted no time targeting her. Ellie watched as they whispered and laughed the same way they had with her. But this time, Ellie didn't stay quiet. She walked over to Mia, introduced herself, and offered to partner with her for drills. Mia's nervous smile was all the thanks Ellie needed. Few weeks Ellie helped Mia find her footing, teaching her the same moves her uncle had taught her. And when Jake tried to pick on Mia during a sparring session, Ellie stepped in, staring him down until he backed off. Asterisk. Then came the revelation that turned Ellie's world upside down. One evening, Sensei Harris called Ellie into his office after class. He sat her down, his usually stern face softened with a rare smile. He handed her an old, worn photograph of a young man in a Marine uniform, standing in the dojo holding a trophy. Ellie's breath caught. It was her Uncle Tom, but younger, fiercer. "Uncle was my best student," Sensei Harris said. "He trained here before he enlisted, won every tournament he entered. He called me last month, said you might show up. Told me to keep an eye on you, but to let you find your own way." Ellie's eyes widened, tears prickling. She hadn't known Tom had been a martial artist, let alone a champion. Sensei Harris leaned forward. "He also told me he taught you some moves, but I didn't realize how much you'd retained until you took down Jake. You've got his spirit, Ellie. Head, be proud." The words hit her like a wave, and for the first time Ellie understood why she hadn't quit. It wasn't just anger or stubbornness. It was a legacy. Her uncle hadn't just taught her to fight head, taught her to believe in herself, to carry his strength forward. That night Ellie went home and found an old box of Tom's things in the attic, including a faded karate belt with his name stitched into it. She held it close, promising herself she'd honor his lessons, not just for her, but for kids like Mia, who needed someone to believe in them too. Asterisk. By the end of the summer, Ellie wasn't just a student, she was a leader. Sensei Harris made her an assistant. Instructor, and the dojo became a place where kids like Mia could feel safe. Ellie had transformed from the shy girl who hid in the shadows to someone who stood tall, not just for herself, but for others. The bullies never laughed at her again, and Cedar Creek learned a lesson it wouldn't forget: never underestimate the quiet ones. If you loved Ellie's story of courage and redemption, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next tale of triumph. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let us know which part of the country you're watching from. Are you in Texas, like Ellie, or maybe California, New York, or somewhere else? Tell us below and let's see how far this story reaches.